have to ask, considering what you just said about Orange County white people, how do you manage to love Orange County so fucking much?
Why didn't I flee up to Portland or Austin or LA or Chicago or New York like so many people my age that were a little bit weird? Look, this is Orange County's my home. My great grandpa, my grandpa came here in 1918 to pick oranges in Anaheim and also work in a packing house that's now a hipster food hall. They got segregated against for their sweat and labor. My mom, she came here as a 9-year old, and her and her siblings, mis tios y tias, they're whiter than any white person you'll ever meet. But that didn't stop them from getting their asses kicked for being Mexicans in 1960s Orange County. 30 years later, I went to a high school that was probably 95% white when my aunt went there in the late 1960s. I graduated in 97. It was 95% Latino at that point. And a lot of the teachers and counselors were 60-year-old gabachos and gabachas who saw that demographic transformation and were not happy about it. I want to fight for, when I became a reporter, even before I was a reporter, once I got into political activism, I wanted to fight for a better Orange County. Why would I? I remember I once dated a woman who was from Orange County. We were up in Berkeley and we're walking around and she's like, "Oh my God, don't you think this is so amazing? This is so wonderful. We have co-ops. We have this." I'm like, why would I want to live in progressive paradise? And she got offended by that. She's like, "Oh, there's a lot of struggles here." I'm like, "Come on. You grew up in Irvine. You don't talk to me about struggles going with a bunch of wocosos. Now you try being, Mexican in Orange County." And so I wanted to help make a better Orange County. That's what I did. That's what myself and others did with OC Weekly. Now, of course, my journalistic mission has changed, focusing on Los Angeles. But still, I still cover Orange County. I still live here. I would not want to go anywhere else. It would be easier if I did live in Los Angeles now, covering the city, because my just driving anywhere in LA is 1 hour minimum coming where I'm from. But it's not a complaint. It's just stating the obvious there. But no, I'm not going to leave Orange County. I'm going to have to be dragged out of Orange County, whether by God or by Trump.
Yeah, speaking of Trump, like how are things, we like to get kind of local news updates from folks. And then nowadays, we last week we interviewed a friend in Minneapolis. And so how are things now with ICE in LA?
I mean, look, they never stopped. People say, "Oh, there's not as many raids as before." They're not as public as they used to be, for sure. They're more furtive now, and they were starting before all the attention. They were starting before Trump invaded Los Angeles in June. They're going to continue happening, and don't forget that Trump's big stupid bill authorized the hiring of what 12,000 ICE agents, and it's $180 billion over a decade. They're not gonna stop. See, I do think though that what gives the city succor, however you say that damn word, Succor, English is not my first language. What gives the city hope is people standing up and fighting. And I really think that Trump, I mean, that's what Trump wants. Trump wants us to cower in fear. Trump wants politicians to go literally to him and kiss the ring. And LA's saying fuck that. Orange County saying fuck that. And so they're standing up. And that's why, same thing with Minneapolis. We really taught the rest of the country, like, you stand up. All the attention, and rightfully so, has gone in Minneapolis and Chicago and all the other places. This caravan of clowns has set up. This masked caravan of clowns has gone up. But LA, we were the first ones. We're the ones who set up those rapid response networks. We're the ones who did Memo Torres with the Daily Memo just for LA Taco, telling people this is where ICE was today. This is where we set up. Film them, be peaceful and all that. LA did that. So I think right now, and then, that's just one group of people fighting back. You have folks fighting in lawsuits. You have folks fighting by just selling, by just being Latino or undocumented in Southern California. That mere presence itself is resistance. So LA has its lumps, but LA standing. LA will always stand. LA will not bend the knee and will not get knocked down.
Can we talk about your owner? I call him Doc Pat. Is that fair? He's He has instituted a sort of system of uh, fairness measurement. Is he what? How's it work? You're measuring objectivity. How is it working on an issue that you feel so passionate about when there are these metrics in place? I'm not even sure how the system works, but maybe you can tell us.
Yeah, look, of course, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong made a lot of attention when he told the opinion section we were not, or they were not allowed to endorse Kamala Harris as president in the 2024 race. I agree with the idea that publications should not be endorsing politicians because politicians are always going to fail you. It's kind of a performative practice, but doing it 6 weeks before the election, I wish would have done it way, way, way before, even right off the bat saying we're not going to endorse anymore, because that would have saved us a lot of grief. So ever since then, I meet people who say, I love your work, but I don't subscribe to the LA Times anymore because your owner is a Trump supporter, and they say all this other stuff. My response to that is I have never been told I cannot report on something. And you read my columns, I think it's pretty obvious where my sympathies lie, or what my opinion is of this administration and whatnot. Another issue, of course, was one of the rollouts that we had. Not just for the opinion section, but for columnists. So I have to reiterate, or I have to point out that I'm a columnist, so I'm allowed to have an opinion. The newsroom, the reporters, they're not allowed to have opinions. They just do the who, what, when, where, why. Another feature that they debuted early last year under the suggestion of Dr. Soon-Shiong was, I mean, they call it people have called it a bias meter. What it is AI sums up whatever someone wrote, assigns it a place on the political spectrum from left of center, center, left, or right of center, right, and left. So 5 different spaces, and then it'll just scrape the internet and try to find, like, opposing views there. It's funny because every year I do an annual predictions column. I call myself Gustradamus, and so I do predictions. What's going to happen in LA this season? So, for instance, I predicted that Rick Caruso would not run for mayor, which absolutely happened to be true. But I also predicted that he would take on Tracy Park. That didn't happen. So obviously, it's just ridiculous predictions. But I did predict that my columns would mess up the bias meter, and so when it rolled out, that's exactly what happened, because I did a story of what else, of course? Orange County and the Ku Klux Klan. I pointed out that, it was the 100th anniversary of Anaheim residents recalling a super Klan majority on the city council. And I pointed out how Anaheim wasn't celebrating that because we don't want to talk about the bad. And I talked about how only in Orange County can, because under the Klan, there was no discrimination against Mexicans. That happened in Anaheim. That happened after the Klan got out of power. So very nuanced argument. AI figured, oh, the Ku Klux Klan did good things because they didn't discriminate against Mexicans. So everyone immediately thought, oh, LA Times telling us Ku Klux Klan is good. I'm like, no, 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 no. So the bias meter got facts wrong, made some stuff up, and then I had to write something. And hey, you want to talk about what am I like, whether there is editorial or owner oversight over me? I was allowed to call what we do AI pendejadas, AI stupidities. So, just saying.
Okay, well, I appreciate that you gummed up the works, mucked them up a little bit. I want to ask you a question that's about coverage. When I was down in LA a couple weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago. There was a protest going on in Pasadena. Because people are being snatched there, and people are being snatched in. But I'm gonna ask this question again. I want you all to know that all of this background noise is going to be eliminated when I do the edit.
It's okay. It's not distracting.
Great. Okay.
Hey, it's better than me than logging on and off like I am. So you have nothing to apologize about. It's all me.
Okay, good. Great. There we go. So I was in Pasadena and I noticed a protest going on there, and there are people being snatched all over town. So I can only ask, how much of it's really getting covered? I mean, I feel like I'm looking at LA Tacos covers to get a sense of who's being snatched. How do people in LA sense what's going on in the ICE area? Do they know?
I mean, look, I keep saying I need to stop that. All you don't need any sort of media to know what's going on with ICE. All you have to do is open up your social media apps because you have these rapid response networks on the ground and telling you in real time, or at least showing you in real time what's going on. LA Taco's coverage has been great. Again, dismissing the LA Times as not doing its work, it's easy to do. It's absolutely easy to do, but it's just not based on reality. My colleagues have, myself and my colleagues, that's all we've been covering since June, all the different aspects. Brittany Mejia has been covering the courts, especially the top lawman in Southern California, Bill Asaley, and how he's bringing these ridiculous charges against protesters, basically for the act of protesting, and juries don't allow him to do an indictment or just find these people not guilty. Brittany and James Quealy on the ground reporting coming from like Ruben Vives, Andrew Campa, Melissa Gomez, Rachel Uranga, more in depth pieces. It's interesting because if there's a big protest that happens maybe what's happening right now with all these Iranians protesting against the regime going on, and basically asking Trump to overthrow the Ayatollah and all that. Those protests don't happen maybe once a year, this big, not that often. So you go cover that. But when there's so many protests and so many walkouts going on around the city, and this is something that LA Taco has talked about as well. Like, you have to figure out, well, what is our best strategy to cover what's going on the field? LA Taco, they brilliantly thought of the idea of the Daily Memo, which is again a reporter, Memo Torres, go does a nightly dispatch and says, "Hey, these are all the detainments that we have tracked for the day. Here's what we're able to find out." They're all verified, by the way. He'll make phone calls and all of that. I think it's brilliant. On our end at the Times, I'm not an editor, but I could give you my specific my strategy. I try to see what's the story behind the story. Who's the person behind the person? What are the activists that have been doing this forever? Who are the people, like stories of transformation. Like, for instance, I did a story about a council member, Ariana Barrios, who she's independent, used to be Democrat, leans more conservative than anything, comes from a Republican household in a very conservative city, and now she's hanging out with 18, and like you see her very prim and proper, does public relations for not the best politicians in Orange County, tend to be more Republican. What was a bag that she wears? But like designer bag and all prim and proper. You don't expect someone like that to transform into an activist, but that's exactly what she has transformed into. So, yeah, I'll go cover protests, of course. I'll be part of that. But like, you have to think as a reporter and as a paper, what can you best offer to rise above just all the other information that's going on? So it's strategic in a way. Is it going to please everyone? Of course not. But have we done a great job of covering what has been the issue in Los Angeles over the past, on top of everything else going on in LA with the Palisades and Eaton Fire and all of that? Yeah, we've done a damn great job.
Can I ask you, when, because I'm always looking at the bright side,
You have
through
to.
everything that we've gone through and just the in your face nature of the white supremacy that we've seen in the Trump administration, do you feel like we could reach that like tipping point in American racism where we see who we really are?
No, because the United States has done a brilliant job of training people into believing that they too can be true blooded Americans, but the cost is racism. Look at what happened to all the ethnic Europeans who we now call white people. You think the Irish used to think, the English thought the Irish were white? No, there's a famous book, How the Irish Became White. Italians were treated as basically Africans, especially Sicilians. You see a lot of the editorial cartoons against them in the 1890s and early 1900s when they were the Mexicans of the East Coast. They're treated like they're depicted as animals. All these different groups have come through, including Mexicans, and we saw what happened in the 24 election. I mean, if you really want to get into who are the true, like, who are the true sellouts, it's my people. It's the Catholics, the Irish, the Poles. The Italians, the Ukrainians, Latinos, they all went for Trump in the 24 election, or like Latinos at 48%, but Latino men did. And Catholics historically have been one of the most maligned ethnic or religious minorities in this country. Our ancestors, they know. I mean, Irish will tell you, oh yeah, no Irish need apply, and that Irish. I mean, these are some of these are lies, by the way. But I'm just saying what the more conservatives will say, that Irish indentured servants were considered to be uh even less valuable than black slaves, like all this crap. Italians. I once had someone. I'm not going to say who it is, but they were a Trump. Someone in my realm, Trump supporters saying, oh no, the people who have been truly looked down upon our Italians. Do you know that one of the biggest lynchings in American history was the lynching of Sicilians in New Orleans? And I told them, yes, I do know that. But now you're going to tell me that somehow Italians had it as bad as blacks, as Asians, as Mexicans in the Southwest? Give me a goddamn break. So Americanism is, again, taking in outsiders, making them think they're insiders by telling them, you have to hate the new people and you have to think that you are being victimized by those new people. That's how we've been for 250 years. And of course, officially as the United States, and beforehand, it will take a lot of deprogramming to ever get to that point. So I'm an optimist also. You have to be. You have to be. But I also know, like, this is imbued and we are inoculated with this hate. All of us, and some groups are more inoculated than others, and some groups are hated more than others. I mean, I could speak, of course, about Mexican Americans. We are here in the American Southwest. We are public enemy number one, and no amount of Trump supporters will ever change that.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to tell you, I have a two-part question. So, Lev, if you want to do your last one, I want to get a lot of bang for the buck.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, this is kind of a little more far afield, but I'm curious about your opinion. Uh, Gusterdamus, um, i- is Gavin Newsom going to be the next U.S. president?
Oh man, I have never liked Newsom. I appreciate things that he does, but I don't like people who are so nakedly ambitious. And that's all Newsom has ever been. Look, he's a smart guy. He's done good stuff. I like how he's fought back against Trump, but I would hope in 2028 we are at a point where we don't have to like continue to say like, yeah, I stood up against Trump. We need a vision. We need someone who will have will be able to sell people all across the country on an agenda that has nothing really to do with Trump. I know it's not going to happen. But people hate California. People loathe California. Kamala got beat for many different reasons. Among the most is that she was a black woman, but also because she was from California. There is this hatred of California. Um, it also depends on who the Republicans are going to run. It also depends on what other Democrats are going to run. I mean, you have different people. Different people pushing different candidates. Right now, it seems that he definitely has the most prominence or the most. Is the most public facing, but that's not going to mean squat in 2 years. We don't know. We don't know just yet. So will he be the next president of California? I'm going to say no right now. It'd be cool. I wouldn't be upset if he is, because that would mean a Republican's not going to be there in the White House. But for now, I'm going to say no.
Hmm. I I look at videos on the internet like all of us do, and I'm curious to know, because you must see a volume of things. What's the most heartbreaking thing you've seen in this period of ICE invasion and kidnappings?
I mean, I'm writing about it as we speak. Just the deportation, detention, and just the terrorizing of kids. This is an administration that's telling Americans have more babies, bragging about how they're having 4 children, 9 children, just children, which is great. If you want to have kids, God bless you. May you be fruitful. May, all of that stuff. But don't tell me on one hand we need more kids, and then on the other hand you're getting rid of kids, almost all brown kids, Latino kids. So the picture of Liam Conejo, the Ecuadorian kid from in Minneapolis, originally from Ecuador, wearing a bunny beanie basically and a Spider-Man cap, looking a Spider-Man backpack, and we're supposed to believe administration says that they love children. Like, give me a fucking break. That is just evil. There's so much heartbreak everywhere, everywhere. But like right now, that's what's on my mind: the children and the Trump administration. They're challenging an legal agreement in 1997, the Flores Agreement, that basically says children should generally not be held in immigration detention for more than 20 days. No, the Trump administration wants to hold them indefinitely. They're creating modern day, I mean, call it what you want. You want to call them concentration camps, gulags, prisoner of war camps. The point is this really a civilized society when where we're stuffing tens of thousands of people and really want to stuff hundreds of thousands of people into detention facilities, all because they want to make a better life for themselves in this country? That's horrid. That is absolutely horrid. And history will not look kindly upon this. And that's one of the few things that gives me solace, is that history will not look kindly on this. And those who stood up to fight this, they will be seen as heroes and sheroes. However it turns out, at least I can rest knowing both of those things will be true.
Alright, I gotcha. So, I was thinking about what you said because I was in Bakersfield about 8 days ago, and, there were ice in the building. They hadn't done their paperwork yet, so they were struggling to get out on time, but I was looking at them, and they don't look like the people that we see on TV now. They were like these 2 skinny. I have the radar for ex-crackheads because 'cause I've seen enough crackheads. And there's the sort of ashiness that I'll explain some other time. But, they were just the unfortunate society. The guy one of the guys, he had the whole, like, sense of restraining orders in his past. You could kind of smell it wafting off of him. And I was thinking, like, this stuff, as ice gets entwined in society and people are like making their livings off of this, livings that they never knew they could make. It's going to be so hard to get rid of it. That's just an aside that I don't need you to go into because the real question is, in the face of all this, what is the most encouraging thing that you've seen?
Again, resistance. They want us to be afraid. They want us to not fight back. They want us to capitulate on all different levels. And more people are saying, hell no. Yeah, they're seeing that this is a modern day police state. Not that I agree with neo Nazis on anything, but you read some neo Nazis and they are opposed to ICE in the sense that, or the growing of ICE in the sense that, okay, once Trump loses, or rather, once Democrats gain back power, because they expect that to happen in 2028, you have tens of thousands of agents. You don't think the Democrats are going to start turning them against us? So it's interesting. So people who have clear eyes, they know exactly what ICE is. They know it is not to keep the homeland safe. It is just to create, basically. I mean, I'm not going to go there. But what brings me solace, what fuels me, again, people are resisting in beautiful ways. And it's not just fellow travelers like you and I who have been at this for a while, who know other people. You're getting people pissed off that never thought they were going to get pissed off. I mentioned earlier Ariana Barrios, but I'll never forget when the Trump administration sent in, the National Guard. It wasn't just in LA. They also sent it down to Santana, because there was a huge protest outside the small detention center near downtown Santana. And I remember, they employed, this is the weekend when all the protests the big ones were happening in June in LA. That was that Monday. I just remember, activists were getting pepper sprayed, pepper balls, tear gas. It was all sorts of craziness. I also saw this guy wearing a poncho, a gaban, with the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, and then blowing one of those soccer horns, vuvuzuelas. That
Y
he looked
yeah,
like Joshua trying to knock down the walls of Jericho. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Then I go up to him and say, "Hey, like, what brought you out here?" He's like, "Well, my wife's Honduran, and like, I'm for deporting the criminals, but this is not that." And I talked to a couple of people, and it was his first protest, and I saw a couple of people like this. I could tell Latinos, and I could tell they were Trump supporters because they were speaking coded language. They were saying they were coming from nicer cities than this, or I was from Santana, but I moved because I didn't want to live in the ghetto. Like I could just tell, and they were all saying what's happening right now is not what Trump's saying, and that was in June. We're now what 7 months later, whatever. Way more people have joined this. Way more people, and more people will join because and the Trump administration knows this, by the way. That's why they kicked out Greg Bovino, the pocket wannabe Patton from Minnesota, currently stuck in El Centro. We'll see what happens there. That's why Tom Homan, shows up, and not that he's any better, but at least he says like, nope, we need to do this a little bit more efficiently and not so public forward. They know that they're losing people. But even the group that has lost the most trust in Trump has been Latino Republicans. And they specifically cite these are Trump supporters. These are people who specifically cite these immigration raids. They'll say, I'm all for deporting criminals, but what's going on right now, that's not that. So that gives me hope. That said, if you just rest on hope, you're not going to get anywhere in this society. You got to do your part.
Do you anticipate any sort of like future blowback from these? Like, I guess it depends on how long it goes on. But I mean, I just can't help but think about like, you know, part of the reasons you had 9/11, right, were U.S. policies towards Afghanistan, the Middle East, Israel ties or whatnot. Um, and then I wonder, like some of these kids that are getting separated from their parents and put into detention facilities for long times, like you know, people that get put into these places, they're going to be suffering trauma. They're going to be suffering, other mental health issues. And I just wonder, is there going to be something in the future where we're going to have to reckon with it? And I'm not saying they're going to become violent terrorists, but like, how are
I
we
know
going
what
to
you mean.
heal from this?
It's going to be years. I mean, families are being ripped apart. American citizens are going back home to or going to the homes of their parents to a place they've never been before. The economic repercussion alone, I mean, you're seeing businesses cratering in Los Angeles, in Santana. So, we're just talking about the issue of immigration and deportation. So, no, this is not going to heal overnight. Of course not, not even close. And I still think we're only at the end of the beginning. Because I do think what happened in Minneapolis, that was an end to like the prelude. We're not even at the beginning. We're at the prelude, for crying out loud. Um, I can't predict that. All I know is that, and we're talking about just the victims. Now, the people on the front lines, they're exhausted. They're having their own trauma, they're having their own issues that they have to deal with. And the Trump administration is banking on all of this trauma to be able to just ground us into dust. That's why, and this is going to be super cheesy, but I don't care because it's true. That's why it's so important for those of us who can to love, to help, to apoyar, which is support in Spanish, but it sounds better in Spanish. Like apoyar is just like, right on, do it. What do you need? Activists buying out street vendors, like telling them, hey, stay home for the day. Here's $500. This is what you would have made the entire day. Stay home. We got you. Those little moments of relaxation, there's going to have to be a lot of that as we go and as we come. So going back to Donnell, you have to be an optimist about this. You need to know that yes, there's going to be hard things happening, but at the end, we will be able to reconstruct what used to be there before and make it better and do it under a better frame than what was in the past. I do believe that. I do believe it'll happen. I can't tell you when it's going to happen. I'm not even going to say I'll be around to